Why do women gravitate toward men who seem emotionally unreachable? The answer isn't found in manipulative mind games or aloof facades. It's rooted in a 2,000-year-old philosophy, Stoic Detachment. Far from indifference, Stoicism teaches a profound mastery over reactive emotions, transforming how men navigate relationships. This isn't about suppressing feelings. It's about cultivating a quiet confidence that radiates security. In a world where neediness and overthinking sabotage connections, the Stoic man thrives. His secret? Understanding that attraction grows not from desperate pursuit, but from the disciplined balance of intention and inner freedom. Stoic detachment, as defined by the ancient philosophers Epictetus and Marcus Aurelius, is the art of separating one's peace of mind from external chaos. It's not apathy, but rather a deliberate focus on what we can control, our judgments, values, and actions, while releasing obsession over what we cannot. Epictetus famously said, "We suffer not from the events in our lives, but from our judgments about them." In modern relationships, this translates to a man who remains unshaken by rejection, unfazed by social pressure, and anchored in self-worth. Where others see a romantic game, the Stoic sees a practice of emotional sovereignty, the ability to engage deeply without clinging to outcomes. This mindset doesn't push people away, it draws them in. Why? Because it signals a rare form of security, one that modern psychology confirms is irresistible. Psychology of attraction, the allure of emotional independence. Human attraction is wired to seek cues of stability and self-sufficiency. Studies in evolutionary psychology reveal that confidence, defined as reduced approval-seeking behavior, triggers admiration because it implies resilience and resourcefulness. For example, a 2017 study in the Journal of Social and Personal Relationships found that individuals perceived as emotionally independent were rated 34% more attractive than those displaying overt neediness. This isn't about arrogance. It's the quiet assurance of someone who doesn't rely on others to validate their worth. Neurologically, this taps into what psychologists call the certainty principle. When a man's sense of security comes from within, he avoids the pitfalls of overanalyzing texts, misreading signals, or suffocating a partner with demands for reassurance. His emotional independence creates space for genuine connection, free of desperation. In contrast, anxiety-driven behaviors, like double texting after silence or molding interests to please others, signal instability, activating subconscious doubts about long-term reliability. The Stoic man disarms this tension by embodying what relationship experts call a secure attachment style: present but not possessive, interested but not invested in controlling outcomes. Stoic practices for modern relationships. Number 1. Amor fati, loving what happens. The Stoic principle of amor fati, or love of fate, urges us to embrace every aspect of life, including rejection and uncertainty, without resistance. Imagine a man who musters the courage to ask someone out, only to be met with a firm no. Instead of spiraling into self-doubt, questioning his worth, or indulging in bitterness, he sees the event for what it truly is. Not a personal failure, but a simple divergence of interests. He reframes the rejection as neutral, neither a catastrophe nor an attack on his character, but merely information about compatibility. This perspective keeps his emotions balanced and prevents him from closing himself off to future opportunities. By practicing amor fati, he does not merely tolerate life's outcomes, but actively embraces them, understanding that every event, no matter how uncomfortable, serves a purpose. As Nietzsche, deeply influenced by Stoicism, famously stated, "My formula for greatness is amor fati, not merely to endure, but to love what is necessary." This shift in mindset transforms adversity into wisdom, rejection into redirection, and uncertainty into a canvas for growth. This way of thinking fosters resilience and emotional stability, ensuring that external events do not dictate one's sense of self-worth, rather than interpreting rejection as a verdict on his desirability or value. The man sees it as a natural part of life, one that everyone experiences. He understands that his perception shapes his reality. If he views rejection as a loss, he will suffer. If he sees it as a learning experience, he remains unshaken. This is the essence of Stoic wisdom. Control what is within your power, your perspective, your reactions, and relinquish attachment to what lies beyond it. Moreover, amor fati teaches that life's unpredictability is not something to resist, but to welcome. The path we envision is rarely the one we walk, and that is not a flaw in life. It is its very nature. The man who internalizes this truth does not see rejection as an obstacle, but as a necessary redirection towards something better aligned with his growth. Instead of fixating on what was denied to him, he shifts his focus to what remains within his grasp. His attitude, his response, and his continued pursuit of meaningful connections. This philosophy extends beyond personal relationships. In every facet of life, career setbacks, failed ventures, unexpected losses, the ability to embrace fate rather than resist it determines whether we grow or wither. Those who cling to an idealized version of how life should be often find themselves disillusioned, while those who adapt with grace find fulfillment. Stoicism reminds us that suffering does not come from events themselves, but from our judgment of them. When we stop labeling experiences as good or bad and instead accept them as necessary steps in our journey, we free ourselves from unnecessary turmoil. The man who practices amor fati walks forward without resentment, knowing that whatever comes his way is not an enemy to be defeated, but a teacher to be embraced. Number 2. Negative visualization. Preparing for loss to appreciate presence. The Stoic practice of premeditatio malorum, famously advocated by Seneca, involves mentally rehearsing potential misfortunes to reduce their emotional impact. In the context of dating, this means deliberately imagining scenarios such as a partner leaving, a date going poorly, or even the relationship ending unexpectedly. While this may seem counterintuitive, it paradoxically fosters deeper gratitude and emotional presence. For instance, a man might ask himself, "What if this conversation is our last? How would I want to show up?" This perspective shifts his focus from attachment to an idealized outcome to a genuine appreciation of the present moment. By accepting the transient nature of relationships, he frees himself from the fear of loss that often leads to desperation, insecurity, or neediness. Instead of clinging, he learns to engage authentically, valuing connection for what it is rather than what he hopes it will become. Far from pessimism, premeditatio malorum is a practical tool for cultivating emotional resilience, allowing one to approach relationships with clarity, confidence, and a true sense of inner peace. Moreover, this practice prevents the common trap of overinvestment in relationships too early. Many people, driven by fear of loneliness or rejection, unconsciously place their happiness in the hands of another. They become excessively agreeable, anxious to please, or afraid to express their true thoughts, behaviors that often repel rather than attract. By preemptively considering loss, the Stoics shifts their mindset from need to appreciation. They recognize that no relationship is guaranteed, and rather than trying to force permanence, they embrace what unfolds naturally. This shift fosters a quiet confidence. They do not seek validation, but instead offer their presence as a gift, unburdened by silent expectations. Additionally, premeditatio malorum teaches emotional self-sufficiency. When one acknowledges that a relationship could end at any moment, they instinctively build a life that is fulfilling on its own. Their happiness is no longer contingent on external validation, making them less reactive and more composed in both attraction and conflict. A Stoic in dating does not panic over mixed signals or ghosting because they have already considered such outcomes. They meet rejection with grace, understanding that loss is not personal but part of life's natural ebb and flow. Ironically, this detached yet engaged attitude makes them more attractive. People are drawn to those who do not seek to possess, but rather to share an experience freely. By embracing impermanence, they paradoxically create deeper, more meaningful connections. Number 3. Dichotomy of control, focusing on effort, not outcomes. Epictetus' dichotomy of control offers a transformative approach to relationships, particularly in how a Stoic man navigates interactions with others. By distinguishing between what is within his power, his actions, values, and efforts, and what is beyond his influence, such as others' reactions or societal expectations, he frees himself from unnecessary emotional turmoil. A Stoic man prioritizes honesty, kindness, and clarity in his intentions, ensuring that he acts with integrity regardless of external outcomes. For instance, instead of anxiously wondering, "Does she like me?" a concern rooted in external validation, he asks himself, "Did I express my interest with respect and sincerity?" This mindset shift eliminates desperation and neediness, as his self-worth is not contingent upon another person's approval. He recognizes that rejection or acceptance is a reflection of the other person's preferences, not a judgment of his intrinsic value. By focusing on what he can control, his behavior, attitude, and emotional discipline, he cultivates confidence and inner peace, making his relationships more fulfilling and resilient. This Stoic approach extends beyond romantic relationships. It applies to friendships, family dynamics, and even professional interactions. When a Stoic man internalizes the dichotomy of control, he no longer seeks to manipulate or coerce others into liking or respecting him. Instead, he focuses on being virtuous, maintaining his principles, and allowing others the freedom to respond as they will. If a friend drifts away or a colleague disrespects him, he does not spiral into resentment or self-pity. He evaluates his own conduct. Was I fair? Was I patient? Did I uphold my values? If the answer is yes, then the outcome, whether positive or negative, is irrelevant to his sense of self. This detachment from external validation makes him emotionally resilient. He does not chase approval, nor does he crumble under rejection. He understands that people's actions are driven by their own experiences, insecurities, and desires, things entirely outside his control. If someone disrespects him, he does not waste energy trying to change them or seek revenge. Instead, he simply adjusts his own response, perhaps distancing himself or setting firm boundaries. In doing so, he remains self-possessed, dignified, and in command of his own inner world. By living according to Stoic principles, a man naturally attracts deeper, more meaningful relationships. His self-assurance and emotional independence make him a source of strength rather than neediness. People are drawn to those who do not demand validation, but instead offer stability, wisdom, and respect. Ironically, by releasing his attachment to others' opinions, he often earns greater admiration. This is the paradox of Stoic relationships. The less one clings to external approval, the more one commands genuine respect. Real-life example: the anxious versus the Stoic. Imagine two men interacting with someone they're attracted to. Alex, anxious. After a first date, Alex compulsively checks his phone. When a reply doesn't come immediately, he overthinks. Asterisk, was I too quiet? Does she think I'm boring? Asterisk, he sends a follow-up text. Asterisk, hey, hope I didn't seem awkward. Asterisk, the anxiety leaks through, signaling insecurity. His need for reassurance inadvertently pushes the other person away, as pressure replaces curiosity. James, Stoic. James enjoys the date, but doesn't fixate on outcomes. He sends a simple post-date message. Asterisk, had a great time. Your insights on the film were spot on. Asterisk, if the response is delayed or never comes, he thinks. Asterisk, either way, I stayed true to myself. Asterisk, he then shifts focus back to his routine. Work, hobbies, friends, radiating a full life that doesn't hinge on one interaction. This ease makes others wonder. Asterisk, what's he got that I don't? Asterisk, the difference isn't indifference, it's emotional sovereignty. James's calm isn't a tactic. It's the byproduct of valuing his own character over external validation. The quiet power of ownership. Stoic detachment isn't coldness. It's the quiet power of a man who owns his worth. By mastering reactive emotions, he avoids the traps of manipulation and neediness, fostering connections built on mutual respect, not insecurity. This philosophy doesn't promise perfect relationships, but it offers something better: the freedom to engage authentically without fear distorting your intentions. As Marcus Aurelius wrote, asterisk, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. Asterisk, in a world obsessed with instant gratification and superficial validation, the Stoic man stands apart. He doesn't chase, he chooses, and that makes all the difference. Conclusion: desperation repels, while self-assurance attracts. When you seek validation from others, constantly fearing rejection or abandonment, you unknowingly hand them the power to dictate your worth. But true magnetism in relationships, whether romantic, platonic, or professional, comes from an unshakable sense of self-worth. Imagine walking into a room with quiet confidence, not needing approval, but instead carrying a presence that speaks for itself. That kind of energy is irresistible. The moment you realize that your value isn't dependent on someone else's recognition, you stop trying to force connections. Instead, people are drawn to you naturally. Those who respect you will stay, and those who don't will drift away, making space for more meaningful relationships. The key isn't arrogance or emotional detachment, but rather an inner knowing that your worth remains intact, regardless of external opinions.